Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, Fish Den 365. I'm Den Haring, and today we're going to talk about one of my favorite late fall winter techniques. It's going to be about blade baiting and spooning. I'm going to share with you my favorite technique, my favorite method for fishing spoons and blade baits. But before we go any further, I just want to let you know that I did a couple of extremely thorough videos on spooning and on blade baits. And I will put a link to them right here so that you can take a look at them. You definitely want to take a look at them because they were full tutorials on how to fish those blade baits. Everything you want to know about blade baits, everything you need to know about spoons, how to fish them, the techniques for fishing them, the ones I've had the most success with, some that I had little success with, all kinds of good information in those two videos. So if you have an interest in them and you haven't seen them yet, take a look at them. I know they get a lot of interest. Every fall I see the viewership for those going up because it's a fall and winter technique and people want to refresh what they saw in the past with that video. So that's good stuff. But in this particular video, I just want to talk about my favorite way to fish them, and we're going to go into that right now. So the way I like to fish these baits the most is on the bow of a boat, and the way I go about doing it is I have my rod. I'll cast the bait out about a half a cast length, which these baits are heavy generally, so you can throw them a long way. I don't want to make a full length cast. It's usually about a half length. If I know what's in front of me, if there's good cover, if I know there's fish in front of me, it might be a third of a cast or even just a pitch. But generally it's a half a cast, and there's two reasons why I like to do this. What I'll do is I'll throw that out there, and then when the bait hits the water, I'll begin very slowly moving towards the bait, using the trolling motor to move towards the bait extremely slowly. And for two primary reasons. One, it allows me to have very good control on the fall of the bait. So in the case of a spoon, you want to have semi-slack line, because if you don't, if you have taut line, that spoon's just going to fall like this through the water column, and it won't look natural. It won't look like a bait fish. But if you have that semi-slack line, well, now the spoon is rocking back and forth and twisting, and it looks like an injured bait fish that's just falling to the bottom. And so you want to have control over that amount of slack in the line, and by moving towards the bait, it helps me to do that. And then in the case of the blade bait, same idea. I can control the fall of the blade bait. Now the blade bait just falls straight down, but there is some controls that you can put on this, and that is the rate of the fall. So you can use your boat speed to control that rate. The faster you move towards the bait, the faster it's going to fall towards the bottom. You can use your rod and your reel to help slow this down too. So you might want the thing to fall fast. You might want it to fall in a medium pace or even at a slow pace, just depending on conditions. But when you use that technique where you're throwing that bait out there about halfway out, and then when it hits the water you start moving toward it, it gives you good control for doing that. The other reason is just as important, and that is so that I can cover water. If I'm doing this technique, it allows me to cover a good area of water. I might be able to cover a whole side of a point or go around a point, or maybe cover some other structural element that I'm trying to fish. And the way I go about doing that is I throw that bait out there like a half a cast. I start moving towards it very, very slowly. After it hits the water, it goes to the bottom, and I begin working the bait, lifting the rod, and then dropping the rod back down again, lifting the rod, dropping the rod back down again, all the while moving towards the bait. So the bait is on the bottom. Here's my boat. Here's my bait. It's down on the bottom. I lift up. It's coming up, and then drops back down. So we're both moving towards each other as this is happening, and then I'll usually lift it up once or twice, a few times right underneath the boat before I reel it in and do it again. So then I throw that back out there again, repeat that process, same thing, throw it out again, repeat that process again, and by doing that I start to cover water. I'm moving the boat as I go around the structural element. And so it allows me to effectively use a vertical bait to cover some swaths of water. And so that's kind of a real nice advantage with that methodology of fishing, because it's controlled, right? Because you're moving the boat at a slow pace and you're working that bait as you do those two things together, you have a nice controlled method of covering a pretty good distance of water. And I like that, the fact that it's coming vertical. Like this bait is a vertical bait, meaning that the fish hit it on the drop, or they might hit it, and usually they hit it on the drop, but sometimes they'll hit it on the way up. But the whole idea is to fish this thing vertically the whole time, and you can do that, but still cover water as you're doing it by using the boat to move towards the bait as you're fishing it. And that is a really big advantage for when you're fishing spoons and blade baits, because it allows you to find the fish faster. And once you find the fish, well, then you can slow down and just, stay put and start putting a hurting on them and catching more of them. Sometimes I'll have the boat directly over the fish. Sometimes I'll be using my electronics, and I might see fish down, in 25 feet of water, and I could drop down to it and catch them. But there's also times where, even in that depth or even deeper, it seems that when the boat gets over them, they get a little shy and they don't eat as well. So when I'm seeing that, I like to back off from them a little bit and then just hold my boat, position my boat so I'm just a little bit away, just a pitch cast away. I pitch it out there, I can feed the line down to them and then work it up and down and catch them that way. And then if you're fishing shallower water, well, you don't have that option, right? If you're fishing 12 feet or less, or 8 feet or 5 feet, if your boat's over those fish, it's going to scare them. So in those cases, you definitely need to cast out to them and work it back that way. But don't ignore the shallow water either, because I've caught some of my best fish, especially smallmouths, in quite shallow water. Usually when that water is between mid 50s and low 50s. When it starts getting down through the 40s, generally the fish start going a little deeper overall. Not always, but overall. But it's always a good idea to throw a few in shallow water just to see what's going on there, because every now and then you might get surprised with really good fish. So let's talk about some of my favorite blade baits, and then we'll get into spoons as well. So my bread and butter blade bait has been for several years now, and still is, the Bass Pro Shops laser blade. I really like this bait. It comes with split rings. I usually upgrade the hooks to Gamakatsu EWGs. You can get these baits in a lot of different colors. This one I think is called Black Shad or something like that. It's a good alewife pattern. I also like the blue and silver. That I like sometimes even better, and works very well in a lot of the area lakes that I fish. So the laser blade is really good. Some other good colors that I like to fish on the laser blade. This is gold. Gold seems to work good in tannic waters when you have that tannic stain to the water, kind of looks like tea. And also on cloudy days, I tend to do better with gold, especially for smallmouths. And then this fire tiger or a perch pattern like this. This is another excellent color that I like to throw with the laser blade. The other bait that I really like to throw is the Demiki Vault. So this one, in the last few years, I've really been liking this bait more and more, and it may eventually overtake the laser blade as my favorite bait. Right now, it's my second favorite bait. It's a very good one. It's got these really big eyes, and I think that helps attract the fish sometimes. But this has a really good tight vibration, and it does catch fish. The Demiki Vault comes in some really good colors as well. Let's talk about spoons a little bit. So one of the spoons that I like to use quite a bit, and is very cheap. You can get this at Jan's Netcraft. It's just their standard spoon. It comes without hooks, but you can get a pack of 5 for a very low price. And so that's usually what I do. And you can get them in 1/2 ounce and 3/4 ounce. I think maybe 5/8. I always upgrade my hook. Oh, well, they don't come with hooks, so I put my own, again, Gamakatsu EWGs. But these are good. This is a really good herring or alewife pattern, the color here. And then this one's a little bit more like an emerald shiner. Quite good. But my favorite spoon by far is the Blade Runner Duh Spoon, D-U-H spoon, Duh Spoon. And this one is a good color. It's got that chartreuse color to it. This is known to go, to catch smallmouths. They go crazy for chartreuse, but it also does very good with stripers, this particular color, especially if the water has a little stain to it. Here's a good color here, good alewife pattern. This is another good color. So you get a lot of these, the Duh Spoon comes in a number of color patterns as well. And they're by far my favorite spoon to fish day in and day out. They have a really good bait fish profile, and they have a really good fall to them. And you can get them in different sizes. I think the one I just showed you is about 3/4 ounce, but they come in larger sizes as well. And so you get that faster fall, more effective in deep water. They do catch fish. And I'd like to show you one other bait. It's actually kind of like a hybrid. It's a little bit of both. This is, and I've made some videos on this in the past. This is called a Seville vibrato. And the neat thing about the vibrato is it's got this line tie right in the center, right on top in the center there. You put your snap through there, and when you lift this up, it vibrates violently just like a blade bait, but when you let it falls like a spoon. That's why I call it a hybrid. It does the best of both worlds. It's got that crazy vibration as you lift up, but when it falls, it has a crazy spoon type fall to it, and it has 2 hooks. So you're more likely to get a good hookup in the fish. Unfortunately, it's a little more likely to hang up when it hits the bottom as well, so something to be aware of. If you're fishing a lot of snaggy areas, you might not want to throw this bait. Maybe a regular spoon is a better choice. But this bait has the best of both worlds, and I've been playing with it quite a bit in the last 2 years and catching quite a good number of fish on it. It comes in different sizes as well. This is the smallest size, and then there's one that's about twice as big as this. Both of them do very well. Here's like a matte finished perch that I really like. Looks just like a little yellow perch, and so this does well in waters where perch are the schooling fish, or there's a lot of little perch in the water. Smallmouths love perch, and so it's always a good bait to throw for those, but everything else eats it too. And so how do you fish these things? You can if you watch those 2 videos that I posted up there, that goes into detail for what I do for actions. But in general, when I'm fishing that method that I talked about, where I throw that bait out and I'm moving towards it slowly, I lift that bait. I usually fish it pretty aggressively at first. I want the fish to tell me that that's not going to work, because if I can get that to trigger the fish to bite, then I can fish faster and find them faster and catch more. So I usually start with a pretty aggressive method, even in real cold water. Even when the water's in the high 30s, low 40s, I still start that way. And then I let the fish dictate what to do. And so what I generally do is just lift up the rod. I'm bringing that bait a good foot off the bottom, maybe 2 feet. If it's a blade bait, you feel that brrr, and then it goes back down, brrr, it goes back down. Spoon, you just lift that spoon up and let it flutter back down a foot or 2 off the bottom. Sometimes the fish are quite active even when the water's that cold. Remember, this is a vertical presentation, so if they're sitting there and it goes in front of their face, I don't think they care too much about how far or how fast it goes. As long as it's in front of their face, they can just lash out and grab it. But there are times when they don't seem to like that much activity in the bait, and so that's when you keep it much closer to the bottom. Maybe just a little burp. You're just burping the blade bait, meaning that you don't really feel a whole lot of vibration before you stop. And what that means is it's not going off the bottom very far. And so sometimes you have to fish it that way to catch the fish. And the same is true for the spoon. You don't have so many big hops with the spoon. The hops are much shorter distance off the bottom. Sometimes you can catch fish by letting these things lay on the bottom. You can, with a blade bait, for example, if that's laying on the bottom, hopefully you can see this. Let me do it this way. If this is laying on the bottom like this and you lift up the bait, it might just lift off the bottom and flip on the other side. And then if you lift it up again, it might and it looks like a dead or dying bait fish, and they'll just pick it up right off the bottom sometimes when that's taking place. And same is true for the spoon. That's when you are really slowing down and paying attention to what the fish are doing and what they're telling you, how they like the bait. There's another way I like to fish these baits that this generally works after maybe you've caught a few, especially with blade baits. Typically, if you're in a school of fish and you've caught a few of them or several of them, sometimes they seem to shut down on the bait a little bit. And one of the ways I found that I can catch a few more is to take that blade or this vibrato, have it go down to the bottom, and then just have it up off the bottom, somewhat just above where the fish are, and I'll just leave it sit there and just let it sit there and be a little patient with it, and every now and then just shake your rod a little bit. And when you do that, a bait like this vibrato, it'll just wiggle a little bit, but it'll flash some, and sometimes that triggers a violent strike. I had some of the most violent hybrid striper strikes that way, just doing that, just letting it sit there where they almost rip the rod out of my hand. So it's always worth it. Doesn't always work, but it's always worth a try to do, especially if you've already caught some and they've kind of shut down and they're not eating anymore. They don't seem to be as active. that's one of the ways to just kind of drive them crazy and make them eat again. Well, I hope you got something out of the video. I hope you learned something or were inspired to maybe try this. And I encourage you to try blade baits and spoons. Some people shy away from fishing these things, but they're really pretty simple to fish. And once you gain a little confidence with them, you're going to like it. It's actually fun to fish. Oftentimes, when you're lifting and dropping these baits, every now and then when a fish hits it, it'll be so aggressive you'll feel the strike and you'll know it. But many times, it's just you let the bait drop, and when you go to lift again, it's heavy and it's a fish. You just, when you're lifting, you're actually setting the hook, and then you'll feel the head shake, and then you got one on. That happens more often than not, where you never really feel the hit. It's just they're on there when you go to lift up. It's quite common, but it's an easy bait to fish. You can cover quite a bit of water effectively in cold water. If you don't want to fish, one of the other ways that we fish cold water is to throw a swim bait out there on a jig head and let it go to the bottom and fish it extremely slow, where you're just crawling that bait. This is a little more activity. It allows you to do a little bit more and be a little more active with the presentation. But because it's a vertical presentation, you can cover water but still get those fish to bite. So it's a really good way to fish. Well, if you like the video, please hit that like button. I'd encourage you to subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to continue to put what I believe is good content that'll help people catch more fish. We're all about the art and science of fishing, especially bass fishing. We're certified Bassified. May God bless your fishing endeavors, and I hope to see you on the water.